The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by Rams On Demand, Seat Giant, Vibe 305, and RWO, Rams World Order. Now enjoy the show.
Down the middle, to the end zone, caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows.
It's Pitts. Nickel Roby Coleman
throws. Enzo caught, touchdown. Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. LaMarcus Joyner returns to the lineup with an interception in London. 35-30. Robert Wood, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA. No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebu Tom. Picked off. Marcus Peters strutting his stuff. Mark Barron the last 4 weeks has been a Pro Bowler.
Oh, it's picked off on the play by John Johnson.
After the throw, and we mentioned that is his 8th completed pass in his career.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand. Todd Gurley, 20, 10, Gurley for MVP. Touchdown LA.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. This is episode 148. I'm here with my buddy Joe Curley, and we're pretty hyped because the Rams are playing the Cowboys this weekend. They're finally playing football. Feels like it's been like a season since they played football, but they're finally going to be on the gridiron, and they're going to be playing a Cowboys team coming off a very impressive win, a win I did not expect. Joe actually had an idea that would kind of happen. I did not. I thought the Seahawks would win that game, but nonetheless, here we are, Rams, Cowboys, Jerry Jones, who's kind of the low-key godfather of this whole project to bring the Rams to LA, and it's all kind of coming full circle. Joe, I mean, you've been talking about this for a while. I mean, this is a game that we really kind of wanted to happen for more reasons than one.
I mean, it's just fitting in so many ways, between, because of the Cowboys' impact on getting the Rams back to Southern California, because of, obviously, the fact that, that I like the fact historically that the Rams have another crack at some playoff games at home in the Coliseum before they move on. You've got these revenge games with with Wilson, Coach Wade Phillips.
Wilson, huh?
Yeah, I've been going all night. Wade Phillips and Scott Linehan and Tavon Austin and all these old friends and old faces, and certainly Rams and Cowboys have postseason history dating back decades, and I know all the old LA Rams fans in Southern California, have huge expectations this weekend because of those great traditions, and certainly the fact that, as somebody who works for the Ventura County Star, that's the two NFL teams that have great connections to Ventura County. The Cowboys training here for 39 of the last 55 years in the summer training camps, and certainly the Los Angeles Rams setting up their headquarters, I should say, a stone's throw from where Tom Landry and Roger Staubach on the campus of Cal Lutheran, what back then was Cal Lutheran College, trained back in the day. So, just a lot of connections, a lot of, Rams and Cowboys fans in this community, which kind of, for all these reasons, you bring up the fan situation in Southern California. Both teams build, you've got America's team against the Rams, who are building this national brand. And, certainly they're also vying for hearts and minds in Southern California. So, I mean, it's just, out of all the Bears are the Bears, but it would have been nothing, that matchup would have been nothing compared to this from a non-football perspective. And, obviously the Seahawks and Rams are divisional rivals, but, again, not as many Seahawks fans in Southern California as Cowboys. Not as much postseason tradition and all the little tie-ins. But I should correct one thing. I did pick Seattle last week. We were on the same. That was an L we both took last week. I was 3-1. I would have won. I was 3-1. I would have been 4-0 against the spread. That was my one. Dallas was my one loss.
Oh, I thought you had
Indy, Philly, and Chargers.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, I butchered
just
that.
Just a little correction. No, I don't want to take credit for being 4-0 if I was really 3-1. I was joking that if I had bet those against the spread, because obviously you had that crazy thing at the end where the Seattle covered, but whatever. Pick it, and we make picks again this week. I'll probably be 0-4, so I'm not going to be patting myself on the back for one good betting week. There's a reason I don't bet on football. Besides the fact that I probably shouldn't, considering my job, but it's not a winning proposition.
No, it's not. I know I'll be asked betting advice from my friend Kyle, who's obsessed with sports betting and asking me, "Oh, who should I bet on?" And at this point, I don't even like the word spread. I'm tired of it, quite honestly. So that's funny, but. We'll dive into this later on the show. It's going to be a pretty nice Cowboys-Rams playoff preview, and then we'll talk a little bit. We'll recap last week's predictions later on as well, very quickly go over that, and then the divisional round predictions. We'll go over those games quickly as well. So we got some nice stuff for you guys, but the first thing before all of that is there's been news. And what we like to do is not ignore the news that's going on around the league, especially when it's pertaining to Sean McVay's ever-growing coaching tree. So first and foremost, the former Rams offensive coordinator, Matt LaFleur, who, by the way, Joe, I went back and I listened to the podcast, and, I mean, we really felt like that move, him moving offensive coordinator, being the play caller in Tennessee was really going to help him. And then it just didn't end up the way, we expected. But, I mean, he's hired by the Packers as head coach. Aaron Rodgers gave the stamp of approval from what I was hearing. And Matt LaFleur, I think is after really marinating on this, I thought it was a good hire, rapid reaction. I think it's a great hire. And, I want to bring up something real quick because I did watch Undisputed the other day, or at least a clip of it, and they had D'Angelo Hall on. And, I don't really like Undisputed, but, it is what it is. They were asking D'Angelo Hall, his thoughts on Matt LaFleur. And, Skip Bayless, he's notorious for using words like doesn't jump off the page, and this isn't no one knows that this guy's a true leader. Can he lead men? And I thought it was really interesting. D'Angelo Hall, who was in that organization, the Washington Redskins organization, when Matt LaFleur was there with McVay and Shanahan, and Aubrey Pleasant for that matter, but I'll get to that little tidbit shortly. He said, Matt LaFleur is somebody that he really, really respected. He didn't really even know, what kind of guy he was until one night they were all out at, a business outing or whatever, hanging out. And, he really heard, Matt LaFleur speak and everything, or talking ball, and he was just floored. I mean, like, he really felt like he could be a head coach. But then that brings me to my next point, because, he's talking about it, and he's like, Shanahan, okay, he can be a guy, obviously Sean McVay, and then Matt LaFleur, but, like, he stops and he's like, an Aubrey Pleasant, defensive back coach of the Rams, now, I mean, he's like, he pauses, like, dramatic pause, and it's like, he's going to be a coach in the NFL soon. He's going to be a head coach in the NFL soon. I mean, he's very, very good. So, I bring this all up because, one, it's pertaining to Matt LaFleur, and two, it's pertaining to Joe Curley, who, again, I'm not going to stop ringing praise on Joe. I mean, Joe was the first one to bring Aubrey Pleasant head coaching, opportunity too light on this podcast. You can't listen to another podcast that could give credit, bringing up Pleasant, because Joe did it last year. I mean, like you were way ahead of the game. Now anything else is kind of a wash. It's kind of like me when I said the Rams should, hire Sean McVay, and everyone was like, "What? He's
Who?
30. He won't work." Who was that?
That's okay. So with all this going on, one point kind of that I made earlier this week is that if someone had brought you the name of Sean McVay, everybody, certainly you knew it. A lot of NFL experts knew it, but the normal fan and the normal reporter wouldn't know Sean McVay from Zach Taylor or Matt LaFleur this time 2 years ago. What really and so that's kind of one, when Packer fans are killing the LaFleur hire or Cardinal fans killing the Kingsbury hire, whatever. That's kind of a point to bring up, is that you never really know. Which I'm sure there were Patriot fans killing the Belichick hire when it happened 20 years ago. So these sort of things happen. But I will say that when Matt was here 2 years ago, you knew he was eventually going to be an NFL coach, but you thought that he needed some seasoning. You thought that he needed to improve. From a media perspective, the head coach is, one, a CEO, and two, he's the face of the franchise to the public. And, I think that's one part where he has a weakness. He saw this is the Green Bay Packers head coach, and I don't know if he's ready for it from a media perspective. But, he'll grow into those roles. Certainly if he wins on the field, it's going to be easy to do, press conferences if he's winning, and the most important thing in that is to get somebody that can work with the quarterback and not waste the remaining years they have of one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Some of these other hires, I understand the Kingsbury hire because he's somebody who has some offensive wizardry to him. But, certainly it looks bad when the guy hasn't had a winning season the last 3 years of college. Obviously, recruiting, college and NFL are two different things. And, if he handles his side of it, great. The Taylor thing, he must have killed it. He must really be an up-and-coming, the stuff that the whole thing of Taylor is, what are you going to remember about Jared Goff's season in 2018? I guess it's unwritten. The ending is unwritten. But it'd be hard to argue that he's been better this year than last year, right? With Zach Taylor as his quarterback coach. Certainly he's got a great pedigree. He's somebody who played the position. He's not, he's 5 years older than McVay was when he was hired, so he's not too young. But that, if Taylor ends up being hired by the Bengals, as everyone expects, that's kind of out of the blue, considering, he was the quarterback coach, not the OC. He's 2 levels down. Really three coaches. He's really the fourth in command offensively for the Rams. So that's amazing. And I don't know. You want to introduce some of the other ones? I actually like the Arians hire. I know Rams fans maybe don't love him as somebody who was a rival, but out of all these hires, he may be the the best hire, simply because he has expertise. He's got experience, and Gase too. Somebody who's been in that division. He might. To me, the Gase hire could be some. There's a possibility there where it could be something like Belichick. Didn't work out in one place, go somewhere else, and it works out. Even though nothing really ever seems to work out for the New York Jets. But out of all those hires, the ones I like the most, and I like Matt LaFleur. As a person, and I like him as a coach. I just don't know if he's going to be able. If it was like Jacksonville or some other, if it's not the Green Bay Packers, I would have liked that hire a lot better. But yeah, I think I like Arians first, especially when you consider he's got Bulls going with him. I think Tampa Bay is going to take a big step up pretty quickly, and I'm kind of wary about the Gase hire. I wonder if Gase there's a little sneaky thing, somebody who's getting a second kick of the can so quickly. I kind of like that hire for the Jets.
Yeah, I think Zach Taylor will start there. Zach Taylor, I think, is expected to be hired by the Bengals by the end of the year. Whenever the Rams season ends, whether it's holding the Lombardi or it's not, I do expect Zach Taylor to be the head coach. There's only one other guy, I think I mentioned him last time, special teams coordinator Darren Simmons. I think he definitely has a shot to get that job because he's an in-house guy. And I said it before, they do like their in-house guys a lot. They do promote from within, and they have let a lot of guys escape their grasp. Obviously Mike Zimmer and Hugh Jackson the first time around. So I don't know if they'll be quick to let him go. But I feel like what it's coming down to is that it's really, at the end of the day, Sean McVay. I mean, the Rams made that bold move, and I'd even say the 49ers made the bold move with Kyle Shanahan. And football minds, I think the casual fan is so quick to say Kyle Shanahan hasn't had success. But football minds and people that are in the league are really high on what the 49ers have done under Shanahan. The lack of talent that has been around them and what he's gotten out of, say, the offense with, Nick Mullins and C.J. Beathard and really only having Jimmy Garoppolo 6, 7, 8 games. I'm talking his tenure. I think it's actually been pretty impressive. I think Shanahan was a good hire. I think he's actually, I wouldn't say exceeding my expectations, but I mean he's right up there with them, despite what they've done and everything. And I think those two hires are really what quote unquote kick the can for the rest of the league. Unless you're the Patriots, unless you're the Patriots with Bill Belichick. I mean, even Mike Zimmer, who was getting head coaching, praise, top head coaching praise last year, coach of the year buzz, he kind of fell off a cliff this year, and it looked like he lost control of his team a little bit towards the end of the year with, Adam Thielen and Kirk Cousins yelling at each other. And then, obviously the whole scapegoat thing, how they kind of pinned that all on John DeFilippo and threw a Band-Aid on it when, it needed more than a Band-Aid. I just think unless you're really Belichick, I mean, what coach besides McVay?
Even Belichick, you're talking about a guy who literally ruined a Super Bowl last year by benching their, one of the best defensive players on the team. I mean, really, Sean McVay is the only coach in the NFL. Well, I don't even want to say that. I mean, we can nitpick some of the things with Sean. I mean, really, nobody's had a great, to me right now, you're talking about a high water mark for quarterback in the NFL, where Tom Brady's mediocre, middle of the pack. There's so many great quarterbacks in the NFL right now. The place has become inundated, and the coaching is now the difference. I mean, so anyway, but without really taking us off topic a little bit, I mean, I think it's pretty funny. Even Belichick, dude, he destroyed the Patriots in that Super Bowl last year. If Malcolm Butler plays that game, and we still don't officially know why, if Butler plays that game, they have a 6th ring. Guaranteed. That's why, they lost to Nick Foles. The underrated reason about that. But anyway, whatever. One point I do want to make about McVay is that everyone's talking about the next McVay, and you want a young, up-and-coming, innovative offensive coach. One danger about all that is you and I both know there's only one Sean McVay. And so, imitators can only get you so far. What makes Sean McVay is his ability to communicate and his total recall, that brain. And I think I was on a national radio program this week, and they tried to make me call him a genius. He kept asking me genius. He wanted me to say the word genius. And, as a reporter, there's certain, you don't want to say that, you don't want to cross that line and heap that much praise publicly on a subject that you're covering. And so I deflected, and I, didn't, I never said the word, or never applied it to him. And I never, I resisted, but I will say this, there's one Sean McVay, and if you're trying to find the next Sean McVay, there's a really good chance that you're going to end up finding an imitation that's not going to work. I think these GMs and these owners would be better served finding the right fit for them, not just some imitator. And so, although I like LaFleur and Taylor may work, and Kingsbury certainly has an offensive pedigree, it's funny. That's not what I would do with my football team, but I would hire somebody, an expert at special teams that can manage a game, who can bring in the best offensive coordinator, the best defensive coordinator. To me, what makes a great coaching staff you have to have three guys. You have to have the CEO, you have to have an offensive guy and a defensive guy, and it can, certainly Coach McVay is good enough that he's basically two of those roles with the Rams. And I would argue that he's lifted the GM, he's lifted the president, he's lifted every aspect of that franchise. He's the straw that stirs the drink. And as long as the Rams have him, I'm sure we're going to get to it. They can cycle through Zach Taylor's, they could cycle through Matt LaFleur's, they can bring in new guys and he can teach them. And my opinion, I think they can cycle through the quarterback position, but I know they have too much invested in him to do that. But before bringing, let's not go down that rabbit hole again. Let's talk about a playoff football game.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So Sean McVay is Reggie Jackson, and also Sean McVay.
Fan, that's right.
And Sean McVay is actual crab meat, and the rest of the league is imitation crab meat. All right, I'm understanding everything now. but
crab meat.
Nice. That's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know. Maybe I'm hungry. Seafood's good.
And the funny thing about that is, again, it's also been pointed out this week, the guy hasn't won a playoff game yet. What are people going to be saying? What are we
actually
going to be saying about Sean McVay?
Did you see what Schrager said?
What did he say?
Sean McVay hasn't won a postseason game since high school.
Oh, right.
He didn't win in college. Yeah. He didn't win in the pros, and he hasn't won since high school. But here's the thing: this isn't. Yeah, and this is not a bash Sean McVay. I'm just saying what he said. Yeah. I personally couldn't care. I couldn't care any less. I mean, people were saying how Deshaun Watson hadn't. I just tweeted this. People were saying how Deshaun Watson hadn't lost a game at any level, went up by one possession in the fourth quarter or whatever, and he lost. So, I take that with a grain of salt. Yeah, so, I mentioned Taylor. I think Taylor to the Bengals, it's a good fit. He coached for Cincinnati. I mentioned that last time on the podcast. I do think it's a good fit. I think Simmons is kind of the runner-up there. I don't think he'll get the job, and I think they're really going to try to push to have him stay. Could definitely be a head coach down the road, good special teams coordinator. And then I think, looking at the other coaches, I really like Kingsbury. There's something about him that just speaks to me. Like, I feel like he's going to be really good in this league. And, sometimes
you just
when
like
you're in Arizona,
the amount of gel in his hair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do that too, so you got to rock the gel. But
a lot of product.
A lot of product. There wasn't enough in LA, so that's why he had to. Anyway, so I like Kingsbury, and I think people lose sight of obviously the Rams weren't going to interview this guy Sean McVay, this boy wonder, this guy that seems to come off like a football savant. You don't interview that guy and let him walk out the door, as fans are now seeing. But I do think even before that, the Rams were hell-bent on making a change. They had guys like Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator that helps the Giants get over the hump and win the Super Bowl. They had Jeff Fisher, a proven veteran coach. But, I mean, he just kind of stabilizes an organization. He's not, you're not going to shoot up to the moon with him, but you're hopefully not going to plummet with him until, the 4-12 year. And I think that's really what did it. NFL teams so often get caught up into, let's just stay consistent. Let's just ride that train and, we'll have that good year and then we'll win now. Or, we won't be there and then we'll just rebuild. It doesn't work that way. Like the Bengals saw 16, 17 years, whatever you want to call it, wasted away with Marvin Lewis. I mean, they didn't win a playoff game, so that should tell you something. So I like this move to go and get a Kingsbury that, look, like Stephen A. Smith was crapping all over this move. He hadn't won. He looks like a bachelor. I don't really care. Frankly, he knows offense. If he gets a really good defensive coordinator, like, I don't know, maybe bring back Steve Wilkes, although that would probably never happen, but that would be perfect. My point is, offensive mind that I think really gets it, and I think they're going to do some special things eventually, whether it's Rosen or Kyler Murray, because that seems to be a hot topic. And then, I think Freddie Kitchens was a good hire by Cleveland. I told you off the air, my only issue with it was firing Greg Williams. The rest of the staff can go. That's Hugh Jackson's staff. I get it. I didn't take it as, big of a deal because it's Hugh Jackson's staff. But to let Greg Williams go when really, like I've said before, if it's not broke, why are you fixing it? I mean, That defense was playing well under Greg Williams, and I think that was really his perfect fit, and they really played hard for him when he was the interim head coach. So I don't really know why they fired him. So I do like the Kitchens move, especially for Baker Mayfield's development. I think that, obviously that's a guy that is going to help.
Keep the verbiage the same, all that stuff. I think an underrated aspect of one thing I want to mention before we move on is, people can't, these other teams that are, the Cardinals and the Packers and all these other teams that are making these decisions, and I think it fits with the Williams situation that, they shouldn't forget is that, part of what made the McVay hire work is keeping the good people on staff, keeping a Bones, not moving him on, finding a veteran on staff, keeping Bones, and then bringing in, a Wade Phillips that can kind of do some of those head coaching jobs, some of the role without, just not in title. And so I think, again, a coaching staff is not one person. And I think some of these other hires, in some of these places are going to be the difference between success and failure.
I totally agree.
For some of these big names.
I think that's very key. I've seen it, even at the college level, being a Kansas Jayhawk fan, they hire, Les Miles, and it's like, I need to see who the coaching staff is going to be before I can even start critiquing anything. So, that's kind of how I look at it. But going back to what you said with Gase is, I totally agree with you. I think people are so quick to look at what he did in Miami and see that there wasn't much production, but that team always had a chance to beat any team. I mean, they kind of, in a way, I felt like they could lose to any team, but they could win against any team. To me, that falls on the fact that I don't feel like Gase had his quarterback, and I don't know if Sam Darnold is his guy. But it doesn't matter because he took the job and that's going to be his guy. The thing I have here is that he finally has a young quarterback to work with. He worked with Jay Cutler, who, yes, he has that, consistency with, the familiarity. But, he's not this young quarterback that can keep developing. Ryan Tannehill, who went through 2 knee injuries. And honestly, Ryan Tannehill's not all that great, for Gase. So I think Gase with...
Yeah, that's a good point. Gase,
I think
who's
Gase,
got now
Sam Darnold,
Tannehill,
and then you give him a running back.
Whew.
I wouldn't be surprised if Gase wanted one of the guys on Miami, and the Jets tried to make a play for him, whether it's a Kenyon Drake or it's a Kalen Ballage. I think one of those guys would be huge if the Jets decide to go that route. But there's some good running backs in this draft, and you have a Le'Veon Bell sitting out there, Tevin Coleman. So, there are guys that could definitely fill that role. and Elijah McGuire's not half bad himself. But that's Gase. We talked about Kitchens. We talked about Kingsbury. Arians, I agree with you. You left out one thing that I really like. It's one of the young football minds that I keep hearing about. It's former Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Byron Leftwich. They brought him in as the quarterback coach, and I thought that was something. Offensive coordinator, and I thought that was something huge because he's the one guy that Arizona Cardinals fans wanted to be the head coach if they fired Wilkes. I mean, he was getting a lot of buzz, and for the fact that Arians was able to get two former Arizona guys in pretty much the snap of a Thanos finger. I mean, it was pretty impressive, honestly, to be out of coaching and then boom, I mean, he got Bowles and Leftwich in like seconds. I mean, it seemed like that just all came together fairly quickly, and then I think,
yeah, they had that thing. What does it remind you of? Remind you of the McVay stuff, right?
Yeah.
Remember when McVay got hired and everything kind of fell together really quickly?
I told you that story.
Maybe a little
Driving
bit like that.
On lunch break, my dad's like, how cool would it be if Sean McVay got Wade Phillips? I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool. Boom, Bleacher Report. Sean McVay is working on a 3-year deal to get Wade Phillips to the Rams. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it was like on cue. And then the last one that was announced, because I think if Miami's smart, I'll tell you this right now, for the listeners, and you, Joe, I think you know him. Chris Richard is doing an unbelievable job with the Dallas Cowboys. Unbelievable job, and I can't credit him enough. I thought he should have been a head coach long ago, back when he proved his worth with the Seattle Seahawks. But nonetheless, he's doing a great job with the Cowboys. There's a reason why their defense is so great. And the fact that him and Rod Marinelli are kind of teaming up and he's really calling the plays where Rod Marinelli's helping him scheme and everything. But I think Miami is out of their gourd if they don't sign him. They need to wait until the Cowboys are out of the playoffs, which could definitely come this weekend. And I think they need to sign. They need to hire Chris Richards. So, that would be that. But the last head coach was Fangio, and I've said it on here. Vic Fangio's awesome. Great defensive coordinator. But this reeks desperation to me. When I first saw this, because I told you, and then, we talked about on the podcast a little bit, Zach Taylor was the favorite for the Denver job. And then Mike Munchak of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's been a head coach in this league before, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. Steelers fans were clamoring for him to stay. And now he's the favorite. And then all of a sudden, Fangio kind of comes out of nowhere. And I think because of the Bears losing, I think they not only lost that game, but they lost their defensive coordinator, who in reality I think made it so much easier, kind of like a Wade Phillips for McVay. He made it so much easier in Matt Nagy's first year. So, I think that was a huge loss for the Bears. But even more so, from what I saw, was that it seemed like Elway just wanted a yes man and, wanted somebody that was going to come in and, just be a guy, be the head coach, and allow Elway to pick the coaching staff and allow Elway to do his thing. And to me, I just felt like that was a little bit of a desperate move on Fangio's part. He's definitely good enough. He could have had a coaching job next year, and I guess he just kind of jumped at the first thing and was willing to sell his soul to the devil. That's all I'm going to say. I feel like...
All right, I think we need to move on.
No,
now.
I love you, Fangio, if you're listening. But anyway, moving on. Cowboys, Rams, playoff preview. Everyone is healthy for the Rams, so this is great. Finally going to be able to see Todd Gurley with C.J. Anderson. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And, LaMarcus will be back, albeit he's struggled, this year. And I think kind of an interesting thing is Countess, because I think Countess in, limited opportunities already looked good. And then he finally got his opportunity to start, with Marquis Christian and kind of alternate there. And, he had an interception, and he honestly looked pretty good. And, I think at points in this season, I think you could definitely say Countess might be just as good as Joyner, if not have played better. So I think that's kind of a interesting kind of, it's not a huge, big name or anything, but that, having him back could be something. But what would you say, Joe, if you had to put a theme on this game, what would that be?
Just the Rams, taking on America's team, trying to become, a national brand, and Sean McVay's, big chance to, continue this build, continue this team, making steps going forward. I think it's a huge game for Sean McVay. I think it's a huge game for Jared Goff. I think they should win this game. They're better than the Cowboys. I think they have to play better than the Cowboys and perform better from a coaching perspective as well. I think this is a window. Think of the different thing. Put it in your mind. They win the game. Put it in your mind. They lose the game. And how does that change things? You win the game. You're playing the NFC Championship game. You've taken a step forward again. 2 great seasons in a row. Taking leaps forward and becoming one of the best teams in the NFL, and a destination. You lose this game, suddenly Sean McVay is 0-2 in the playoffs. Suddenly your number 1 overall pick, Jared Goff, is 0-2 in the playoffs. And you've gone from the odds-on Super Bowl favorite to not winning a playoff game. To me, I guess the theme of this game is gotta get it done, to me. This is the game that will determine whether or not this is a successful season or not. I don't know if that's a theme, but that's the reality for this
I
team
definitely can resonate with that. I think that's really that's the appropriate theme there. I guess I'll say this: get on track. What do I mean by that? Get on track. Get on track on your offense, okay? Because, yes, this offense is, they continue. They just scored over 40 points, whatever. But there's just something that has left this offense. And you can say it's Cooper Kupp, but I think it happened before that. I just don't, I don't think it's... Well, it didn't happen before that. I don't think it's Cooper Kupp. We'll just say that. Because I think without Cooper Kupp, you saw the Chiefs game. I just don't think it's... Cooper Kupp isn't the reason for all this and everything. But I will say this. This is the opportunity for a guy like, Josh Reynolds, who's trying to show the Rams his long-term value for this, for this team. If he's a short-term piece that's going to kind of be a placeholder until Kupp comes back, or, if he's going to make things tough and have the Rams have to play 4 receivers. Gerald Everett, you were drafted in the 2nd round. I think, Gerald Everett had his shining, you talk about one shining moment, March Madness and everything. If you, say the season ends and Gerald Everett doesn't make another play, what is Gerald Everett's one shining moment? It's him helping the Rams to win that game against Kansas City easily. That's it. But he can add to that, and I feel like that was kind of huge. In a big situation, he was able to make that play. I definitely think he will be up for the task in this one and in playoff games to come. And the last one, the last part of this, Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee last year in a playoff game dropped a touchdown on 4th down, a touchdown that he should have had. Watkins dropped 2. Sammy Watkins dropped 2, but Tyler Higbee's was big because that was to overcome all of that. Despite Watkins dropping 2 touchdowns, the Rams, they marched down the field on that drive and they had a chance to score. And Goff put the ball in the money, and that's the craziest thing for me is that the reason, if you told me, heading into the Rams-Falcons game, that the Rams were going to lose the game, but Goff wasn't going to look like he was outmatched. He was actually going to outplay the guy that was just previously in the Super Bowl the year before and the MVP. I would have said you were crazy. But that's what happened. Jared Goff, in my opinion, I think many other people would agree, played better than Matt Ryan. And the Falcons won. And there were some, unforeseen turnovers, and Pharoah Cooper just had the worst night of his life, and all that came to be. But I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about that. It just goes to show you when you're in the playoffs, you're you're really going up against the fact that anything like a fumble or an interception, it can snowball. I think it gets really bad in the Super Bowl. I mean, we saw, Peyton Manning getting the snap over his head against the Seahawks, and that game was just not even a Super Bowl caliber game after that. I mean, the Seahawks just routed them. And you see things like that. But in the playoffs, before you get to the Super Bowl, I feel like the divisional, the wild card, and the championship game, those things do snowball. They do, mistakes are bigger when it means more. I think it was, what's his face? Tony Dungy, I think, is the one that said, if you get to the playoffs on your strengths, and your weaknesses are what takes you out of the playoffs. And I think that makes a lot of sense because obviously the Rams got there with their offense, and they did turn the ball over quite a few times on defense as well, and they won games that way. But right now everyone's talking about this run defense. And if that's their weakness, the Cowboys can exploit that with Ezekiel Elliott. And if they get a huge game out of Elliott, it's going to really push the Rams' hand. I've seen the Rams score 54 points, so I'm not about to say because Ezekiel Elliott, ran for 180, the Rams lose. I think that is ludicrous, and I've been seeing that a lot. If some guy runs for this amount of yards, the Rams lose. There's no correlation whatsoever, because Jared Goff had 5 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes had 7 against the Rams, and he went home the loser. So I don't look at it like that, but I do think the Rams really have to keep Zeke under the microscope, and they have to be able to shut him down because he is a key. Because it's not what he can do on his own, it's what he opens up for Dak Prescott. And when this Cowboys team, if they can manage the game, their defense is good enough. If the Rams can't score on the Cowboys, and this is a close game, the Cowboys are going to be in the driver's seat to steal this one.
My key matchups, Cooper and Talib. I think the Rams can win this game if Zeke goes for 150. I don't think they can win this game.
You just did what I was saying. I'm messing with you.
Yeah. I don't think they can. If Cooper goes for, if say Elliott goes big and then Cooper's held to 4 for 40 and out of the end zone, Rams win that game. If Cooper goes off, it's going to open everything up. It's going to be a game. So, I like that matchup for decision. Gurley against, those really talented, Rams Cowboys linebackers. I like, and let's just say for old time's sake, Linehan against Phillips. 2 guys going up against their former teams they're head coaches of.
I mean, Phillips against Garrett is an easy one for me because, Garrett took his job. And, the Cowboys really stuck with him. They stuck by Garrett. I would say they kind of forced Phillips out, but that's my take. So, yeah, that would be one of the matchups. I think Marcus Peters going up against Amari Cooper. I've watched film going with, back to Kansas City versus Oakland. Cooper gets the better of Marcus Peters more often than not. And
you don't think it's Talib against Peters? Well, they won't.
I think they might change a little bit, but what I think is that I would almost just see them put in Amari in motion. I would want that matchup. He does. It's like, for instance, Joe, in baseball, you see it all the time. Oh, a guy's batting 344, when he goes up against this pitcher, and then when he goes up against another pitcher, he's batting 212. I mean, you're gonna have him play that game to go up against that pitcher.
Matchups.
But it's kind of like that where I feel like Amari Cooper is more prone to, to be able to outdo Marcus Peters. I do think the fact is they've played each other so often that they know each other's tricks, and I think Marcus Peters brings more tricks to the table than somebody like Amari Cooper. But I think that'd be a matchup. I think I definitely think Donald, whoever he goes up against, I think it's going to be Connor Williams. I think that'll be a matchup to watch. I mean, Connor Williams was regarded as the top overall tackle in the draft, and then he ends up getting drafted as a guard. So that was a little surprising, but that'll be a matchup. And I guess really just the speedy linebackers versus, the young Rams tight ends. Because, I mean, you have, I believe his name is Damian Wilson. I always forget his name. Damian Wilson, and then obviously, the big name guy they got from Notre Dame, Jalen Smith, who, I mean, he really can fly all over the field. He's really starting to play without thinking. It looks all second nature to him again, which is a good thing, Joe, because I hate to see guys that are that talented, that immense potential, and then they suffer some brutal injury and they don't look anywhere near the same at the next level. Jalen Smith has completely changed his. I would just say he's back to where we thought he would be, which is scary for the Rams because linebacker play is what kind of got him bounced out last year. Deion Jones was huge. And, I mean, he had a pass breakup in the end zone with Watkins, and he had all those the stops and everything. To me, when you have a guy that can play, can flip his hips in coverage, and he can play up in the box, and he can blitz and can play sideline to sideline like Jalen Smith can, I think you have a serious weapon. But I mean, I would also say, the Rams receivers are really good. And I think, one of the key matchups here is the receivers versus the Cowboys secondary, because Cowboys secondary, they have a lot of these guys where you're like, oh, Xavier Woods, I know he went to Louisiana Tech, I followed him in the draft or whatever. Yeah, Xavier Woods is really good. I mean, I'm not the biggest Jeff Heath fan, but he kind of keeps it all together. He's the glue guy. Byron Jones was moved to corner after playing safety his whole career, and he is loving that move. He's one of the best in the league. Chidobe Awuzie, former draft crush of mine from Colorado, he's a guy to look out for. And, I just think even, Jordan Lewis, the guy they got from Michigan, I think Jordan Lewis in the slot is definitely going to be something, versus the Rams receivers. Robert Woods, to me, is the key in this one because, no matter what happens, Jared Goff isn't going to have his security blanket in Cooper Kupp. It's going to be Robert Woods. Robert Woods had a huge game against the Falcons. Of course, it was semi-garbage time because they were just trying to come back from a, more than one possession game, and they didn't have a ton of time. But Woods came in the clutch on multiple opportunities when the number one guy was shut down in Sammy Watkins. I don't expect Brandon Cooks to be shut down, but I think Robert Woods is your possession guy. He's the guy that is going to, obviously, Joe, we can't talk about him enough on here as a blocker. Great route runner, and his hands are, just that's the thing, his wherewithal to stay in bounds. You get him that sideline, the toe tap. He does it all. And I think if the Rams are really needing to kind of have a guy put the team on their back at receiver and help Goff out, if it's a tough game, Robert Woods is getting the nod.
Yeah, I like that. I think this game is going to be decided. Looking at this, looking at these teams, looking at the matchups. I think this game is going to be decided in two places, and that's in between. It's center guard on both sides of the ball. Whoever generates the most interior pressure, we saw that as a weakness in December for the Rams. One of the significant reasons why they lost the Bears and the Eagles, and then also they generate that more pressure up the middle than any team in football, obviously because of Aaron Donald. So I think that whichever of the quarterbacks is under the most interior pressure, that's going to determine the game. And I think, a corollary to that, you kind of just alluded to it, is that, I do think that, the Rams receivers, have an advantage in this Cowboys secondary. I think the Cowboys are strong up front, strong front seven. But if the Rams are going to be able to protect, I think they can win down the field. And I think this is ultimately a Jared Goff game. If Jared Goff performs well, is protected, and doesn't miss throws, the Rams are going to win this game by 2 touchdowns. If he's under pressure, that's when he can get sped up a little bit. We can maybe see him like he was in early December, and then the Rams.
It's not going to be a cakewalk. I thought a really good breakdown of the game was done on NFL Network by Willie McGinnis. He was saying how, look, this Cowboys team is not the best matchup for the Rams, because what's the one thing they're weak in? A run defense. Well, the Cowboys can run it. And the thing is, again, like I said, that opens up, it makes the whole playing field easier for Dak Prescott. Now, Dak Prescott, and I've been seeing this all over Twitter and Facebook and whatever, I'm kind of tired of seeing it, but Dak Prescott has better stats or whatever than Jared Goff. Yes, let's just completely forget that he, played 7 games under like a porous offensive line, and he was with Jeff Fisher and everything his first year. But, all of that. Anyway, my point, Dak Prescott isn't as good as his stats say. And he needs things to go right for him. He needs to be schemed. They need to have him running. They need to call plays where, he has options where, he can either, run a zone read with Zeke and either hand it off or run up the middle. He did that quite a bit with Seattle, and it helped the play. But one thing McGinnis pointed out was that they run a lot of trap plays. So what the Eagles did with the Rams is that they basically, the whole point of a trap play is you're going to allow, the edge guy, or say the interior guy and Aaron Donald, to kind of blow by, one of the offensive linemen. They're going to move out of the way because now the trap play is going to the left side. Aaron Donald already pursued because he was shooting the gap. And, the Rams are a team, the defense anyway, they like to shoot gaps and they get aggressive. Wade Phillips gets really aggressive, and that can work against the Rams. That's why you see those big chunk plays, because there's not really anybody, in the middle of the field. So I thought that was interesting because Dallas did that quite a bit with Seattle, kept them all, on their feet and everything. And that was one of the things, when the Eagles were running all over the Rams, that's what they used. So, that's huge for the Cowboys. But another thing McGinnis brought up is the Rams offense is about to explode, because he thinks that, all this time off, Todd Gurley's finally healthy, and they found something in C.J. Anderson. McVay with his offensive mind, and I tend to agree. I think you really can use C.J. and Todd at the same time. You can put Todd, out wide, and then have CJ, at the running back position, or you could split back formation, or you could have CJ. The possibilities are endless, and that's why I was so keen on saying when the Rams got CJ Anderson and he ran that, he had that first game where he went off. I was like, that is your guy. That's your X factor throughout the rest of the playoffs. He can lead you to a Super Bowl, even though you have the best running back in the league. Doesn't hurt to have a second really good back, and I think that's huge for them, really.
Yeah, I think that's that's good stuff. Whew. This is going to be a Saturday night to remember, buddy. Just got all the makings, but Rams should win this game. Rams got this game. I don't want to think about what this thing's going to look like if everyone wants a Sean McVay and he's 0 for 2 in the playoffs.
I mean, my thing is, if the Rams, I feel like, because I have this game going, I mean, it's a little early well, I'll just say it anyway. I have this game going along the lines of 34-27. I don't think that the Cowboys at any given time could, drop 40. I think the Rams could if they had to. I just, that's my one reservation here. And I just got to say, I don't think, and this is not me saying that this game won't be close, but I just don't think the Cowboys offense can keep up with the Rams offense. And I don't think the Cowboys defense is great as they've been. I actually was surprised to see their passing rank in defensive DVOA was actually 16th in total pass defense, where the Rams were surprisingly 9th. The Rams are 28th in run, and that's where the Cowboys excel. They're 5th in the league. So if the Rams can run it with Todd Gurley, set up the play action, they're already considered a middle-of-the-road, pass defense, even though I really respect their defense more than that. But, you would have to imagine if they can't stop Todd Gurley, this is going to be a long night for the Cowboys. Because we know, if Zeke goes off, we know the Rams have a hard time stopping, the run early on. But, we also know that Wade Phillips is the master of making second half adjustments for his defense. And they start to really clamp down. And I just can't help but think, I mean, if they get, Todd going early and you get CJ in there, and then, Jared has an easy, clean pocket where he's just making these, Minnesota Vikings game-esque throws, I don't see a team that's going to beat them. And I do feel like they could have that opportunity.
Well, I think this is, obviously the defense didn't live up to everything that was expected of them this year, but this is the opportunity for them to really, make a lot of people this week are pointing to the Rams defense as being the reason why the Cowboys have a chance to go in there and pull off the upset. And the way I look at it is I think the Rams D, has a chance to live up to the hype in this postseason, make everyone forget, take those stats, throw them to the side. Wade Phillips kind of mentioned it a couple times at his presser. And I think, one of the reasons why I feel pretty confident about the Rams in this game is I think the defense was on the upswing late in the year. And, I think there's going to be some big plays made by that D on Saturday to make the difference. And, we're going to get to predictions at some point, and I think, if I think this is a Rams 10-point win. I'll say 30. You said what, 34-27 or something? I'll say
I think the Rams score 30, and if they do, they win.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rams are in the 30s.
To me,
Cowboys are in the 20s.
That's the best. I mean, it doesn't matter what the Rams win by. They just need to win. I'm not going to look at this and think anything less of them, because the bye works for you, but also works against you. Because yes, you haven't played in 2 weeks, but you also haven't played in 2 weeks. So yes, you're healthy and you're rested. But I mean, how many times? I mean, I told you, you were expecting a blowout with the Lions game, and I told you coming off a bye, I'm like, they're going to be rusty, and this is going to be a close game, and they're going to win at the end, and deserve to win, but it's not going to be a blowout like you would expect, and that's kind of where I lean with this. Is could the Rams blow out the Cowboys on their best day? Yes, I feel like they could really blow out any team on their best day, but could they also lose to the Cowboys? Yes. And could they get off to a bad start where it's too much to handle? Well, I don't know. We saw that last year, so yeah. I just think, to me, there's a lot at stake in this game, but I think that the one key thing to bring up is this is a clean slate. You have to look at this. If you make the postseason, it doesn't matter how bad your regular season was. If you're a starter, if you're a role player, if you have a snap in this game, you can change your fortunes. Marcus Peters, I'm looking at you. Marcus Peters had a, down year. Obviously, people were placing bets to see how many interceptions he'd have this year. I know Sims and Lefko podcast had the over-under at 7. I don't believe he came close to that. So, I don't think he was expecting the year he had. Ndamukong Suh started to come on at the end of the year. Brockers had a surprising down year. LaMarcus Joyner had a down year. This is the time for the guys that didn't have their best year to step up. Or this is the time for a guy that, like Gerald Everett, that was kind of not really much in... They weren't really involved in the passing attack until later on in the year. They can step up. This is the clean slate. This is where you have your opportunity to become a household name. This is it. So I think that's one of the key things to bring up because, household names, this is where they're made. And I think the Rams are really going to need all hands on deck, regardless if it's a 10-point win or a 1-point win. And I think you could see, a big game out of Peters or, I think John Johnson, who's kind of been that, secret superstar in the league, I would say, for the Rams. I think this is where he could have his presence felt by the national media and people start to catch on with him, and this is how it all starts. So I think that's something to hold on to, especially, you're seeing it with Dak Prescott, on the Cowboys side of things. Since they got Amari Cooper, he's a completely different quarterback. So, I said last week I could see Dak throwing 4 interceptions against Seattle and Seattle winning. Didn't happen. Dak didn't play a horrible game, and they won the football game, more importantly. So now they won at home. Now they have to go on the road and go up against the Rams, which are going to have home field advantage. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, the Rams fans knew they were having this game. This is the great thing about having a bye, because you're going to play in the divisional round. So these games are already purchased by Rams fans. And at the end of the day, the Cowboys fans didn't know who they were going to play or if they were going to play. So the Rams fans had their head start, and I think this is going to be a majority Rams crowd, and I think this is going to be a hostile environment for Dak Prescott, and they're going to have to overcome that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 70. It's supposed to be 31% Cowboys fans, which when you consider Southern California, I think that's a pretty good number for the Rams. I think it's probably going to be closer to 65-35, maybe 60-40, but I think it's going to be a really unique atmosphere, certainly hostile for both teams. But the key to me is, I think, going to be, the Rams are going to have to get ahead. They're going to have to make it hostile for the Cowboys. They're going to have to shut those Cowboys fans up. And that's the only thing.
Oh yeah,
that really matters.
Yeah, I mean, all that matters is really at the end of the day is who McVay. I mean, great. McVay knows everything, and he's a genius and all that. But did you see the hype video? It's like, if you win, you advance. If you lose, you don't. Like it's sometimes it's just that simple. And I don't think any Rams fans imagined losing to the Falcons. But guest of the podcast Charles Davis said, it seemed like the Rams were just a year ahead. They were ahead of schedule. And it wasn't their year. And it's funny because we just saw Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears lose at home in the first round, and it just seemed like they were a year ahead. This Rams team seems like they're on track, and in most cases, while they have their weaknesses, and every team in the league does, Joe, this seems like the best team in the league when they want to be.
Yeah. No, I agree. They just got to go out and prove it.
All right,
let's get to predictions, bud.
Are we? We're going right. We're going right to the divisional round, right? Yeah. So okay. So you are 3-1, and I'm 1-3.
Oh, we're not. We're going to recap.
We're not. We can do it real quick.
Yeah. No, I don't want to. I don't want to take a victory lap. No, we don't take a victory lap till after the year. We already mentioned that I went 3-1, and
thanks
you went
for
2-2,
me an extra.
and I'll give you the extra one. Yeah, see, you gave me an extra one, then I gave you an extra one. So straight up, no spread. To me, a lot of these are coin flips. I don't feel good about any of these games besides the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win by at least 10. I think they're going to cover. And the other games, I think, are coin flips. They're games that again, I don't bet, but I would not bet these games. And let's go. Well, you want to go one by one?
We can go one by one.
Or you want me to give you all four? What do you want to do? All three? I'll go first on Colts Chiefs. I've been leaning Colts the entire week, but I'm going to change that. I'll go Chiefs, even with the rough defense. I think the Colts looked really balanced last week, but I just can't go against Pat Mahomes in his playoff opener. I just believe too much in the kid.
This pains me because I really like the Colts, and I love what they're doing, and Reich is coach of the year.
Yeah, I think we're agreeing on this.
Albeit they made it another week past the Bears. I feel like they are kind of ahead of schedule, and that's okay. You're 1-5, and look at what you've done. It's incredible.
Definitely.
I think this will come down to the wire, but at the end of the day, as much as I trust Andrew Luck, I just feel like, again, the whole Patrick Mahomes dynamic, and when we say dynamic, when you have a Tyreek Hill or a Travis Kelce, I just think there's too much there where if they get into a bind, we saw they almost eked out the Rams win. It's hard to pick against that team. So I'm going to say Chiefs. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised if the Colts win. I just think that game is going to be a lot of fun. That's a great way to kick off the weekend. So I think you and I both are going Chiefs.
Yeah, totally agree.
And we both said Rams.
Well, we both had Rams. And so this is going to be the one that's going to be painful.
Yeah, let's
I think the dynasty may be over. I think it's unbelievable. There's a great line in Boston Sports Radio this week. I've heard a couple times. They're talking about the Chargers, and they're talking about San Diego and Los Angeles. And there's some local radio guys in Boston that keep saying that the Chargers are dangerous this week because they're now a Los Angeles team and no longer a loser San Diego team. So I find that hysterical that, Los Angeles is associated with winning, San Diego is associated with losing. Obviously, the Chargers should have beaten the Patriots in the playoffs a couple times. I think it's kind of fitting, a bookend finish if, maybe one of the biggest, or if maybe the biggest win of oh man, why am I blanking? Oh, Phillip Rivers' career is, happens in New England. But I think it's the same thing with the Rams. The Rams got to beat the Rams have to beat the, Rams have to win this weekend. And I think the Chargers are in a position where they just have the better team. I think the Chargers have more talent than New England. I think they got to win that game even on the road. Unless there's some weather that really screws them up, I think the Chargers are going to win the game. I'm going to pick the Chargers.
So I always say it's hard to go up against Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, but I continuously do it. I did in the Eagles game. I don't know why I did, and the Eagles somehow panned off. This is hard for me because originally, Joe, and I'm sure you've been following, it was supposed to be a snowy, cold game. And now it doesn't seem like it's going to be that way. Mm-hmm. And it almost seems like the football gods are paving the way for Phillip Rivers to get his first Super Bowl. But it's tough. I'm probably going to go. I have a rule where, teams are more likely to win when they play a second time and they lost in the regular season. Just look at when the Rams lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. They beat them in the regular season. And then when the Rams beat the Titans, they actually lost to the Titans in the regular season. So that's why I don't want to play the Chiefs. Anyway, yes. So I'm going to go the Chargers because I do think that they had a chance in that game against the Patriots. They made it a close game, and earlier in the year, the Patriots won. I think the Chargers eke this one out. and I think it's really going to come down. All these are going to come down to the wire, except like you said, I think the Rams-Cowboys game. The Rams like to always have us sweat every game out, but that game won't be as close as say the other ones. I don't think. So we have the same 3 picks,
All
and
right.
I swear to God, Joe, if we have the same 4, oh my God.
Frick it. I don't think we're going to have the same one here because I'm just going to ride with St. Nick. I mean, what the heck? I may be the only guy. They were the biggest underdog last week, and they won outright. They're the biggest underdog this week, and I'm telling you, I'm going to keep picking the Eagles until somebody kills that team. St. Nick refuses to die. I'm going to ride Foles until they lose. I can't believe I'm picking the Saints to lose in the Dome, but that's what I'm going to do.
Then. So you're picking it. You're picking a team.
You didn't pick against the Saints.
You're picking a team that lost 48-7.
That got annihilated there.
You're picking in that same building. You're picking them.
It's not the same team.
You're
with
picking
Foles
against
at
a guy.
quarterback.
He threw 4 touchdowns. Drew Brees threw 4 touchdowns against them. No interceptions. Went for it. I think they went like 4 for 4 on 4th downs. I don't know why they went for it so much, but
I just don't want to go 4-0 this week. I just want to go 3-1 again.
Because I'm going with you. I am picking the Eagles. I have been
4 for 4.
I have been on this for the whole week. I'm telling you right now, the Eagles are winning this game.
Really?
There are noticeable things that are happening, okay? The Saints weren't battle-tested the way the Rams are, and I do think that's going to come to bite them. They didn't play a Chicago Bears team and lose. They didn't play an Eagles team and lost. They barely eked out wins against Tampa Bay and Carolina with Cam Newton and having like no arm, and Tampa Bay being Tampa Bay, who fired their head coach. So then, I see them week 17, their starters are sitting, their offensive starters, but their defensive starters are out there. And, I don't even care because you guys are trying to tell me how great Teddy Bridgewater is. So don't even say that, well, their offense isn't good or anything. They have Teddy Bridgewater out there, and it's like the defense, they were playing. They were just getting abused by Kyle Allen from Houston. The UDFA quarterback was abusing them. And to me, that spoke volume to me because they lost that game, and they lost it convincingly, but they aren't even going to take that seriously because, well, our starters weren't out there. To me, that's a little bit of a problem, and I started to notice, sometimes these teams that get really hyped, they kind of fall flat. And, I think last year, I hate to be that guy, but I feel like it was the Rams. You saw how hyped they got. They beat the Titans in a, crazy game to seal the NFC West. They basically ripped the torch from the Seattle Seahawks, went into their dome, and, disrespected them. And then, week 17, they sit their starters, and they lose to the 49ers, and then the next game, they're bounced out. Interesting. The Saints have not been the same team. They have not. They don't get me wrong, they beat the Steelers. I'll give them that. But I just don't feel like we've seen the same potent Drew Brees. I don't feel like this offense, there's something missing with this offense that they had when they played the Rams, that they had when they played the Buccaneers at the beginning of the year and lost. It's not there anymore. Their defense, they become more of a defensive team, and their defense just gave up all those points to Kyle Allen. So that's why I kind of feel like the Saints are about to get humbled a little bit. Now, next off, the Eagles. The Eagles are coming off an emotional win. Now, the last time I saw a team come off an emotional win like that in the playoffs was, last year with the Vikings. The Vikings had the Minneapolis Miracle against none other than the Saints, and it was kind of a letdown against the Eagles the next week. I don't expect it to be a letdown because I think Nick Foles is just magic. I don't know what it is. I can't put a finger on it. The Eagles have something going for them. They play gritty defensive football. They manage games. That score was hideous. Hideous. And if you go to the Dome and you play that type of defense, the Saints defense is good enough to kind of match you. But I don't know. It's weird. And I know it doesn't make much sense on paper. But we saw Nick Foles throw for over 400 yards this year. I believe that they're equipped. In any situation in this game. They can win the football game. Keep in mind, the Saints were in the Dome. They won against the Rams, but they were up 21-0 and blew a 21-point lead. So, if you're blowing a 21-point lead to the Rams, you may not come away with an L. But if you're facing Saint Nick, you're definitely coming away with an L. So,
I can't believe we went 4 for 4. I can't believe we made all the same picks. I guess.
Yep.
All that's left is to play the game.
I guess the Eagles and Rams. I think the biggest thing for me, there's extra motivation because the Saints blew the Eagles out of the water, and it was disrespectful. And I remember them going for it. They're up by like 35. I texted you this, and Sean Payton had the offense on the field, and Drew Brees throws it on 4th and 4, throws a bomb to Alvin Kamara, and they score. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, are you serious? That was like Wentz had 3 interceptions. He was so uncharacteristic. They thought they'd ended the champs. They thought they ended them. See, that's the good thing. You know who you want to be next week? The Rams. Because if the Rams beat the Cowboys, they're the team that can take down the Eagles. They almost did, even though they played kind of a bad game at home. They get them at home again. Can the Eagles beat them 3 times? Then again, you have to get there. But I'm just saying, I'd rather be the Rams, who lost to the Eagles in the regular season, than beat the team that was throwing bombs down the field on 4th and 4, up 35 points. I'm just saying.
All right, let's cross.
All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up. I think we gave you guys our heart and soul, and man, regardless, if the Rams don't come out victorious, so they do come out victorious, you guys are going to have a lot of interviews to listen to because I'm just doing these draft interviews constantly. So, there's yeah. I was gonna put one on here today, but I figured, you know what, we'll keep it Rams oriented at least for the first playoff game, and then I'll throw some at you next week. So. Thank you guys so much, as usual, for tuning in. This is Jake Ellenbogen. He's Joe Curley, and we are the 4-0 Twins, and we're signing off. So you guys take it easy, and go Rams.
Good luck Saturday night, guys. Good luck.